Dr. DiAnn Sanchez and fellow students at Amberton University, thank you for joining me as I discuss research of the situational leadership theory. My name is Ashton Boone. I am a human resources professional in the software industry with a leadership background in the hospitality industry. There is a wide variety of different theoretical approaches to leadership in organizations. The styles differ in that some emphasize individual behavior and traits, some focus on relationships, and others define it as having both in varying complexities. Leadership has been studied immensely on its effectiveness and productivity. However, the studies are not cut and dry. The style of leadership and its effectiveness can vary depending on the organization, the industry, and geographic location. The style of leadership that this presentation will cover is the situational theory. The research on this topic will investigate the effect of situational leadership across geographically dispersed teams. Many organizations have office locations within the United States and internationally. These organizations have leaders who are responsible for followers that do not work in the same building, state, or region as themselves. It is important that a leader in this situation be adaptable to still have an impact on the company's foreign productivity and remote employee engagement. I will begin by defining the situational leadership theory, including its history and founders. I will cover the studies that support the situational leadership approach and provide research of its strengths and criticisms. With many theories, there are limitations in the research, and I will share those drawbacks as it pertains to the situational style, as well as offer suggestions for future research in my closing discussion. So what is situational leadership? When a leader adapts his or her leadership style to match the needs of his or her followers, he or she is leading situationally. The leadership method would vary and be dependent upon the situation that arises. Just as there are multiple personalities, cultural differences, and generational cohorts, there are different ways to handle different circumstances. For the leader to be successful using this style, he or she must be task-oriented and relationship-oriented. In 1969, Blanchard and Hersey developed situational leadership theory in their classic book, Management of Organizational Behavior. This theory was first called the life cycle theory of leadership. During the mid-1970s, it was renamed the situational leadership theory. Both men have continued to refine and update their situational leadership theories. Situational leadership is composed of directive and supportive dimensions in which the leader must assess its subordinates on their competency and how committed they are. The directive dimension is shown horizontally here, and the supportive dimension is on the vertical axis. This method is prescriptive in that it provides the leader with a leadership style to use for a given situation. The model specifies that the most effective leadership style is determined by the readiness level a follower exhibits. Readiness level, previously termed maturity. The 4 development levels of situational leadership are Style 1. The first style is a high directive, low supportive style. A leader can be prescribed this directing style when productivity is low and he or she needs to solely provide instructions to achieve the goal. Very little time is spent using supportive behaviors. It is more of a, here's how you do it, now do it state. And it's close monitoring to ensure completion. Followers in this category have low competence, which means they are not quite sure how to reach the goal. However, they are excited for the challenge, therefore they have high commitment. Viewers can see the accompanying development level underneath, shown here. The second style, indicated by the orange color, is both high directing and high supportive. It is considered the coaching style of leadership. The leader provides instructions to complete the task, but is also encouraging and asks for follower input. The leader in the coaching approach is an excellent communicator and is attentive to the followers' socio-emotional needs. If we take a look at the accompanying followers development level 2, it describes the followers as having low competence and low commitment. This means that the followers are starting to learn their job duties, but they are still needing the coaching and direction from the leader to accomplish the tasks and goals. In addition, the followers have low commitment. They have lost motivation. The third style suggested by Hersey and Blanchard in the situational leadership model is described in the top left box as the supportive approach. It is a high supportive, low directive style. The supportive style includes listening, applauding, asking for input, and providing helpful feedback. Leaders in this style recognize their followers' efforts and reward them. They allow their followers to have more control of the daily operations, but are also around to lend a hand and offer general guidance. Followers under this style of leadership have high competence and variable commitment. This can be seen in the corresponding development level at the bottom, D3. Followers are aware of the job requirements and are performing fine, but they are not quite sure if they can accomplish the goal by themselves. The fourth style of leadership is the delegating approach, indicated by the green color. It is called the low supportive, low directive style. A leader using this style relieves himself of control. Followers take responsibility for getting the job done the way that they see fit. Followers under this style fall in the development level 4. They are high in competence and they have high commitment. They are seasoned with proven abilities and are highly motivated to complete tasks, accomplish goals, and succeed with little support or direction. The leader will need to ask questions that reference the goals looking to be accomplished and determine the development or readiness level of the group. There is a corresponding leadership style with each development level. For example, a D1 follower level, for an example, an enthusiastic beginner, would respond better to directing leader behaviors of style 1. Another example, a new hire within an organization may have 10 years of experience but may struggle a bit in their field of expertise due to a recent change in industries. If they have high commitment, they will likely just require some coaching before they are comfortable, as opposed to a directive approach. Followers move from different stages of development depending on the situation. So effective leadership is maximized when the leader adjusts his or her style to match follower readiness. Leaders with teams dispersed across the globe can find it difficult to assess a group's development level, mainly because the leader is not heavily involved in each individual's day-to-day. While technology has positively impacted an organization's means of communication, the physical contact, body language, for example, in-person mannerisms, and general work ethic are missed if the only communication taking place between leader and follower is via phone conference or webcam. Leaders have to rely on metrics and performance to determine if the individual is doing his or her job well. Thinking about the situational leadership model, followers who work from home or out of other offices may appear motivated or may seem competent, but the leaders may not fully grasp if he or she is or isn't. The situational leadership approach assesses the situation to determine which style of leadership is best. The situation can be influenced by environmental factors such as the workplace setting, coworkers, resources available to complete tasks, and communication. Furthermore, employee engagement is impacted when the employee is not fully participative in organizational functions due to not being in the office. If a leader has all of these variables working against him, how does the leader make a solid suggestion of their followers' development level? On the other hand, because this is the situational leadership theory, the leader can proactively take into account the situation of remote employees and use the reporting metrics of productivity and performance to assess who works best in which situations and plot them in a development level that way. So assessing the group based on the numbers. But will that be enough? The purpose of this study is to determine if the situational leadership approach is the most effective for leading geographically dispersed teams. Hypotheses. So hypothesis 1, the situational leadership approach will positively influence the productivity of remote employees. 2, the situational leadership approach will increase employee engagement, resulting in higher retention of remote employees. Situational leadership positively influences perceived leader performance. It has been a major factor in training and development programs for over 400 of the Fortune 500 companies. However, a literature search revealed only a handful of published, peer-reviewed studies investigating this approach. So it is difficult to know if the situational leadership approach compares favorably to other leadership approaches. This particular presentation is asking if the situational leadership approach is effective across geographically dispersed teams, but the studies offer mixed support to its effectiveness in general. There is unclear distinction between the 3 factors: development levels, commitment, and competence, and how each are weighted across the follower levels. It does not clearly describe the way follower commitment is conceptualized. There is also a lack of solid evidence that supports the leadership style prescriptions for each development level. Of the few peer-reviewed studies that have been published, Vicchio and colleagues investigated the model on several occasions. None of their results supported the predicted 3-factor interaction. Furthermore, this leadership theory does not consider demographic characteristics. Demographics is the statistical data about the characteristics of a population, such as age, gender, sexual orientation, income level, religion, occupation, marital status, birth rates, etc. Demographics have influence on a person's preferences for a leadership style. With that in mind, it can be difficult to accept a designated suggestive style based on development levels that are not backed by strong evidence. A team's demographic can vary solely based on geographic location. A team sitting in India may have strong influence on religion, or a team working out of Turkey may be predominantly male and fit or prefer a certain leadership style in that regard. In China, the demographic may be very different from the team's demographic in the United States. And if we take it one step further, teams dispersed on opposite ends of the United States may also vary demographically. So if this approach does not consider demographic characteristics, how can it prove to be a successful style of leadership for employees who work remotely? It doesn't appear to prove successful at all. Even with the lack of empirical evidence to support it, the situational leadership appears to deliver greater performance. The Leader Behavior Description Questionnaire is usually employed by followers to describe the behaviors of their leader or supervisor. However, the questionnaire can be used by peers or superiors to describe a given leader whom they know well enough to describe accurately. With proper changes in instructions, the questionnaire can also be used by a leader to describe his own behavior. Leader Effectiveness and Adaptability Description is a self-assessment in which leaders complete a questionnaire. The questions ask that leaders imagine themselves in the proposed situations and circle the best way in which they would respond to each circumstance. At the end, the leaders have a scoring key and can calculate where they fall in leader behaviors. These tools were used in an education study to prove the validity of situational leadership. 12 school principals and 4 teachers at each of their schools were asked to take the lead and the LBDQ-12, respectively. They were given 20 situations and asked to respond with an alternative action reflecting one of the 4 combinations of task and relationship behavior in the leadership model. The lead measures task and relationship behavior, and the LBDQ-12 measures initiating structure and consideration. Assuming task behaviors are related to initiating structure and relationship behaviors to be related to consideration, researchers concluded that a leader found to be effective on the lead would sometimes be perceived on the LBDQ as initiating structure or showing consideration. As expected, principals perceived by teachers as always initiating structure tended to choose high-risk, low-relationship actions on the lead, and they did not have high effectiveness scores. The principals that preferred low-task, high-relationship behavior was perceived by teachers as seldom or never initiating structure. These preliminary findings indicate some validity for the education version of the lead. Principals can be seen as executives in your organization and teachers as senior managers active in the day-to-day. This study is limited in that there are several assumptions and no solid evidence to say how task behaviors are related to initiation of structure and how relationship behaviors are related to consideration. Let's take a look at two more case studies. Researchers tested the effect of leader-follower matches of 182 supervisor and subordinate dyads on organizational citizenship behavior in China based on situational leadership theory. Their purpose was to expand the understanding of situational leadership theory application in an emerging market in a culture different from Western countries. To achieve leadership effectiveness, leaders need followers to obtain their desired results. Therefore, matching appropriate leadership behavior with a follower's level of readiness should be effective. Due to the limited amount of research conducted on the interactions between leaders and follower readiness, this case study sought to take an angle of organizational citizenship behaviors to show correlations and effectiveness of situational leadership. Organizational citizenship behaviors is a person's voluntary commitment within an organization or company that is not part of his or her contractual tasks. For teams to go above and beyond their normal job duties, leaders can assume that they appreciate their work and want the company to succeed. The followers care about the goals and are engaged in the work that they do. This includes teams that are geographically dispersed. By measuring the organizational citizenship behaviors, or OCB, the researchers will have insight on tasks and relationship behaviors and determine if situational leadership impacts it. Participants comprised 150 leaders and 300 employees from organizations located in the southern Pearl River Delta in China. Each participant's education level was coded and considered. Paired samples were used, each having two questionnaires, QA and QB. Questionnaires were distributed as follows. QAs were distributed to 150 managers in the Master of Business Administration and Executive Master of Business Administration classes in one southern university in China to individually assess employee readiness and OCB of two subordinates. Each manager took away two QBs, each sealed in an envelope for two subordinates. After their leadership style had been individually assessed by the two subordinates, they brought the completed questionnaires to the next class. The two scores were combined and then took the average as the supervisor's score. 91 leadership style questionnaires were valid, and 182 sets of leader-follower dyads remained as the final sample. All skills were measured on a 5-point Likert scale ranging from 1 to 5, going from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Situational leadership style was measured by a 14-item scale of supportive and directive supervision. Researchers also measured controls, which are typically included in leadership research, including age, education level, and length of time in the organization industry. Results suggest that executives should enhance their leadership capacity using a contingency perspective. Only a leader who is able to act in multiple roles can adapt to a complex, dynamic, and competitive environment with a high level of effectiveness. An open environment with interactive communication would be helpful in developing OCB. This case sought to expand the understanding of situational leadership application in an emerging market different from Western countries. Results indicated that situational leadership and employee readiness matches had a positive effect on organizational culture behavior. It does not matter whether the employee is in the same office location or not. The situational leader and follower readiness relationship must align to have a positive influence on organizational culture behavior. The higher the morale and engagement, the higher the chance that the employee will do more than what is asked of him, and they will produce a higher quality output. Case study 2, an exploratory content analysis of situational leadership. The aim of this study was to investigate the validity and utility of the situational leadership theory, whilst partially overcoming these methodological issues through use of analysis of speech content, behavior, reasoned allocation of participants to readiness levels, and a controlled evaluative context. 8 transcripts of successful supervision interviews are subjected to in-depth content analysis to investigate the validity of the aspects of the situational leadership model, principally that successful leadership interactions would vary systematically according to the level of supervisee experience. The supervisees consist of a novice, 4 training therapists, and 3 postgraduate therapist practitioners. Statistical analyses are undertaken to investigate fundamental predicted differences between the speech behaviors associated with the different development levels of these supervisees. Interviews were subjected to content analysis, which is a distinctive approach to analysis that seeks to quantify the context of text in a systematic and replicable manner. Interviews were transcribed and proofread. Coding categories associated with the manifest content were defined through analyzing a preliminary selection of interview segments and by developing a coding dictionary, testing and revising the data until no new categories emerged. Reliability of the coding system was established by the first author through coding the same interview on 2 occasions, once at the start of the data coding and a second time at the end of the data collection, which was 6 weeks later. Interviews were content analyzed by measuring the quantity of text associated with each category by using the Microsoft Word word count function. Investigative statistical analyses were undertaken to compare differences in interview profile and content over follower readiness levels. Whilst R1 level, therapists elicited higher levels of instruction from supervisors. The supervision did not contain the supervisor control behaviors which are associated with aspects of closer supervision. R2 therapist supervision did not contain the higher levels of explanation and questioning predicted by the model. Similarly, R3 therapists requested more feedback from supervisors. They did not appear to receive an increased proportion of feedback within their supervision in comparison to R2s. However, readiness level 3 staff did receive predicted higher levels of reassurance and lower levels of instructional explanatory supervisory speech. As a conclusion to this case study, the situational leadership theory was partially supported. Shortcomings of reviewed studies. In case 1, we saw that employee readiness was measured with the dimensions of ability and willingness. The way in which the development level is verified is missing. Another shortcoming, number 2 listed here, participants were mainly from enterprises in the Pearl River Delta in China, thus limiting the generalizability of the results. Shortcomings of case 2. 1, the inclusion of only one R1 participant and no R4 therapist within the sample limited the study's scope. Supervisors were supervising their followers in the implementation of various therapy approaches. And 3, a self-selection bias may have arisen through the use of supervisee volunteers. The Changed Leadership Landscape, What Matters Today, written by Joan Marquise in 2015, presents the challenges in leadership today and the leadership styles that have contemporary usefulness in aiding the goal of being a continuously successful organization. To perform well, today's leaders must react quickly, anticipate change so that they can act proactively, be visionaries and strategists so that they can be trendsetters rather than followers, perform as role models and set clear goals, promote and reward agility, hone team performance, and be consistent in their feedback to minimize confusion. Marquise describes situational leadership as a seasoned style used in 21st century leadership practices. This approach has pros and cons, but can be used to achieve successful performance. Effective leadership motivates employees to meet and exceed organizational goals. Employees who are included in finding solutions to organizational problems feel a part of the bigger picture. If asked to provide their opinion, they will continue to seek ways to improve. Even if they do not physically see their coworkers and leaders daily, they will become a proactive part of the organization and produce more. The leader's flexible style to match their needs will build a trusting relationship that results in more work getting completed and at a higher quality level. Studies conclude that situational leadership has a positive influence on productivity. It also shows that situational leadership and employee readiness is linked to organizational culture behavior, which is directly correlated to employee engagement. 2 of the 3 hypotheses are proven. Effective leadership can be achieved by the situational leadership theory because it shows that a manager's understanding of his followers' needs is critical to the follower's desire to produce more. However, it is more difficult to assess the development level of team members sitting in other parts of the country. There is not sufficient evidence to prove that situational leadership is the best approach to positively influencing employee performance if they work remotely. Transformational leadership theory has a direct correlation between communication effectiveness and leader performance. This style positively influences productivity and performance of remote employees. However, distance, in this case, does not matter about communication effectiveness. According to the results obtained in the studies of situational leadership theory of Hersey and Blanchard, the style is directly related to the improvement of employees' task productivity. Therefore, it's highly recommended for leaders to consider applying situational leadership theory when they find that their employees' productivity and engagement is decreasing. However, the situational leadership theory does not prove to be the best style of leadership for teams geographically dispersed. There is little evidence to support its impact on remote workers and assessing the development levels of these remote workers. Researchers should consider non-biased surveys that assess leader behaviors in a variety of countries and regions of each country. Demographics should be considered as well. Incorporating the LBDQ and LEAD questionnaire so that remote followers can provide leader feedback is essential to understanding how the situational style of leadership works in dispersed teams. Much of the research completed in the study left the purpose unanswered or unresolved. The researcher, myself, came across case studies that proved that transformational leadership would be effective in geographically dispersed teams. Thank you so much for your time today.